This is one of my favorite weapons of all time because it's so silly looking. The trigger does two things. It both cocks and drops the hammer. And the act of cocking the hammer also rotates the cylinders. There's less things to do. You just do one thing. The great trainer Clint Smith would say handguns put holes in people, rifles put holes through people, and you're gonna have to bleep this. Shotguns tear chunks of off of people and throw that on the ground. Hello folks, I'm Paul Meixner. I'm a filmmaker and weapons and tactics instructor, currently working as a firearms instructor at Modern Warriors Nashville. Today, we're going to talk about Red Dead Redemption and the weapons in the video game. Stay tuned. The Catlan Revolver. What's funny about that is Uberti. This is a Uberti right here. I got a bunch more on my list that I want to acquire. They make, they're an Italian company that make reproductions, pretty high quality reproductions, and they call their Colt single action army the Cattleman. It's in every single Western ever made. It was John Wayne's favorite gun to shoot. I thought I would like an 1875 a little bit better, but I tell you what, the grip angle on this thing is just awesome. Now, the Scofield. The Scofield is at the top of my list for next single action to get. The difference between the Scofield and most modern revolvers, well, we're not going to do that one because this is kind of a weird twist on an old design. But what you do is you have to take the hammer to half cock, open the loading gate, load each individual round, and then you actually have to skip the first one if you want to carry it so you don't shoot yourself since the hammer, firing pin's attached to the hammer. So you can only carry 5 rounds in here, even though it's a 6-shooter. All right, and then to empty it out, you got to, again, take it to half cock, open the loading gate, and then you got to push this plunger thing to get rid of each round. That takes a little bit of time. Time is not your friend in a gunfight. What's neat about the Scofield is that there is a little lever on the back, and the whole gun breaks open. It's a top break, and so then you can just dump all the rounds out, put new rounds in, pop it back up, and get going. All right, double action revolver. So a single action means the trigger does one thing. All the trigger does in a single action is drop the hammer, which means you have to cock the hammer every time for a revolver. That's single action. For a double action revolver, the trigger does two things. It both cocks and drops the hammer, and the act of cocking the hammer also rotates the cylinders. Now that means it's a much harder trigger pull, but there's less things to do. You just do one thing. Now most double action revolvers can also be single action. So now you learned something. The Winchester Repeater, the gun that won the West. So a repeating rifle, this is kind of the AR-15 of the Old West. Instead of semi-auto though, it had a lever action. Now you notice how he's loaded on the side there. Having the ability to load it from the side is huge because a lot of those guns back in the day were tube fed, which means when you want to reload it, you got to unscrew this thing and then drop rounds into a tube and then put it back in. This also means that this gun I could shoot, get behind cover, put a couple more, shoot, put another one in, shoot, so you can constantly keep that thing fed. Now the downside is if you're in the prone shooting, in order to do the lever, you got to rotate over or you got to be getting a little bit high up. So the rolling block, he's going to cock the hammer. Oh, that one's got a nice fancy scope on it. You cock the hammer back and then you move the breech block back. And the breech block, it looks like a wheel almost. And so that's why they call it the rolling block, because the block will just roll back into position. You push that back and then you go bang. So they were around, I think, late 1800s. By 1914, they were kind of already, they were old by then. There was a lot better modern designs. The explosive rifle. I'm going to imagine that this is a video game gun. So I've used a lot of grenade launchers in my day. I have not used an explosive rifle. Yeah, that looks like something like a Mauser or something. And see it. Yeah, single shot, HE rounds. I don't know what size caliber this would be, but I want one. Look at trying to hit the dude on horseback. Oh my goodness. Did he get him? I can't tell. Yeah, this thing's awesome. It makes me think of Terminator 2, having him run the M79 bloop gun. Yeah, I don't know how you do this in real life. I mean, it's possible, but don't shoot it that close, or do it. There you go. Yeah, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. The sawed-off shotgun. Let's hope this is a side-by-side double barrel. It is a side-by-side double barrel. So, one of my favorite westerns of all time. I like super realistic stuff, but then I like some of the cheesy stuff. And El Dorado, with a young James Caan and John Wayne. And James Caan's character, good old Mississippi, that was his name. He couldn't hit, we'll say crap. Couldn't hit crap with a 6-shooter, so they gave him a sawed-off double barrel shotgun. And hilarity ensues. Now we have the standard double barrel shotgun. These are called coach guns because when they did a lot of stagecoach driving, everything was transported either by train or stagecoach, and stagecoaches would get robbed a lot. I mean, you'd have 2 shots, 12 gauge, and that's a man stopper right there. The great trainer Clint Smith would say, handguns put holes in people, rifles put holes through people, and you're gonna have to bleep this. Shotguns tear chunks of off of people and throw that on the ground. So if you're trying to rob a stagecoach and a dude is pointing a double barrel shotgun at you, you're going to think twice. You make up for lack of capacity with effectiveness. All right, the pump shotgun. Funny story about the pump shotgun. John Moses Browning, again, the patron saint of firearm designs, wanted to make a pump shotgun, and Winchester was like, no, we want you to make a lever action shotgun. And John Moses Browning was like, no, that's going to be silly, not as reliable. And Winchester was like, do it anyway. So he did it, and it was all right. It was a repeating shotgun, and then he made the pump shotgun, and that changed everything. Pump shotguns are still effective to this day. They're awesome, and one of the great things about them, where a lot of semi-auto shotguns have failed, is that you can run multiple loads. And from a military or law enforcement standpoint, if you want to run bean bags or rubber balls, of which I have somewhere in this house, or double-aught buck or slugs, or you want to be John Wick and run dragon's breath because it looks cool, a pump shotgun will run everything. All right, the blunderbuss. This is one of my favorite weapons of all time because it's so silly looking and effective. So this is a muzzle loader, all right? You're going to just load a bunch of crap down there, and you're going to point. This is a close-range weapon. Probably going to have a percussion cap. There's some that are flintlocks. There's all sorts of blunderbusses, but essentially you load a bunch of crap down in there, and you let it go instead of think like a musket shotgun, and they sound ridiculous too. Go on Google Images and look up silencer, and then look up pistol loudener. It looks like a trumpet people screw on the end of their pistol. It's just a silly thing, but that's always what I think of when I see a blunderbuss. That and Looney Tunes. All right, the Gatling gun. People have been trying to make a Gatling gun for a very long time, but back in the day, manufacturing wasn't super reliable, and so by the time there was cartridges, this was now possible. They did do like a percussion cap, black powder variant. Even when they finally had cartridges, this was used with a paper cartridge, believe it or not. It was very smoky. So like a traditional machine gun position where you don't want to be seen, that's not going to happen. But yeah, Gatling guns are super modern now with electric driven. They're super scary, super effective. But that one was kind of weird because you need to have some way to load it. And they didn't have belt feds back then, so they would essentially have a hopper, like a paintball hopper. It'd just be a vertical magazine that was gravity fed into the 6 barrels that were rotating. And I think in the 1880s, they finally switched to brass cartridges. And the 4570 variants, they actually put on ships. And the 4570 ones had two hoppers filled with that big chunky 4570 round. So those are cool. All right, the Browning gun. So this looks like a water-cooled Maxim to me, and I don't know why they call it the Browning. Maybe Browning had something to do with this, but this is recoil operated. So where the Gatling gun, you need some way to propel it, and this is before there was electric motors everywhere, so you had to hand crank it. This one, you just pull the trigger, and the fuel in the gunpowder operates the machine until there's no more fuel left. So they're kind of heavy because they're water-cooled, and one person could operate it by himself, but usually you had a crew of people running it because you got to keep filling the water as it evaporates. You got to keep loading it. You got to bring out new links of ammunition. These were used, an awful lot in Africa, and these are still being used today in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. They've been modernized a little bit with optics and whatnot, but I saw a video of one recently that was still on the old cast iron wheels and stuff, and he's like, it's really effective when when we're getting attacked. All right, the cannon. Funny story, I might have or might not have, as a young child, made a black powder cannon out of gas piping in my backyard, and then my parents found out before I had an opportunity to try it, and they're like, hey, we're really proud of you for using your ingenuity, but this is really dangerous, so next time ask, and we'll find a way for you to figure out this stuff in a safer setting. And no, I didn't end up ever using it. So cannons have been around, most historians believe, at least the mid-1300s, but there's some evidence that they might have been around since the 1200s. We still have cannons to this day. A big evolution in cannons was with rifling. They would cut grooves into the barrel and then make them much more accurate. All sorts of cannons, but they're pretty simple in operation. You have an explosion, you have an enclosure for that explosion, so we have pressure that launches a big-ass thing out at whatever you want to destroy. So this is it's interesting because there's an awful wide range of weapons in this. Most of them looked pretty realistic. Obviously, it's video game magic, right? So like in the 1800s, you're not going to be running a Browning high power. I think it is kind of fun that you have access to that stuff, but most of it looked pretty cool. Yeah, pretty much most of them, mid to late 1800s firearms. I hear this game is awesome and people love it, so the firearms look pretty cool in it too. All right, folks, thank you for your time. Again, I'm Paul Meixner. If you ever want to take a lesson from me, hit up Modern Warriors Nashville. If you ever want to hear any more about my hilarious hijinks, check out Thunderpunk Radio. Until then, I will see you next time.